According to Nietzsche, the mark of a person who has been liberated is not money, status, or exemplary morality, but this: they are no longer ashamed of themselves. And shame, if you look closely, does not resemble an emotion. It is a subtle mechanism that makes you shrink more and more and drift away from the very opportunities that could help you grow. If that is true, then why does it matter to be free of shame? For Nietzsche, freedom is not simply doing whatever you want. Freedom is daring to become the person you essentially are, even when that makes others uncomfortable. And shame is the invisible cord that tightens around that will. It makes us smaller and forces us to deny our own nature just to fit the standard. In this video, we will go straight into that darkness. Why is shame so dangerous that Nietzsche sees it as a refined form of slavery? How is it manufactured, and who benefits from the feeling of "I am something vile" inside you? And most importantly, how do you dismantle it step by step so you can truly become who you are? If you have ever felt you were merely playing a role to satisfy your parents, your partner, society, then this is not just another video on your newsfeed. This may be one of the rare moments you look back at the question, in the end, before whom am I ashamed? And that answer will determine the rest of your life. Part 1. Nietzschean Freedom: Becoming Who You Are. In The Gay Science, Nietzsche writes, "What does your conscience say? You should become who you are. What does it mean to become what you already are?" Nietzsche is not talking about creating a brand new self from scratch, but bringing into the light what has long been there, buried, silenced. That is, if you no longer needed titles, no longer needed religion, if you stripped away every label, then in the end, what is you? And why, until now, have you still not become that? Imagine you are an acorn. Inside that tiny seed, the entire form of a sturdy old oak has already been encoded. Its height, the spread of its crown, its ability to withstand storms. But if the soil is too barren, if there is no sunlight, if the roots are restrained inside a small pot, the oak never truly has the chance to become what it is by nature. It lives, but it lives like a bonsai, trimmed to please someone else's eye. Most of us are the same. Inside us, there is a certain kind of person. Some are born with the bearing of leaders. Some are born creators who cannot endure a life of rigid templates. Some belong to the stage, some to the lab, some to wandering journeys. But environment, norms, and fear bind that oak tree inside a pot of office life, a pot of family expectations, a pot of "so your parents can have peace of mind." From a psychological perspective, this is not entirely vague. Your temperament, your deepest tendencies, introversion or extroversion, risk-seeking or safety-oriented, show themselves very early. Nietzsche does not use scientific terminology, but his intuition is the same. A human being is not a blank slate. In us, there is already a certain form that wants to reveal itself. He calls this force the will to power. The will to power is not merely the desire to dominate others. First and foremost, it is the tendency to rise, to express, to become stronger than the self you were yesterday. A child draws all day because there is a natural pull in them toward color and shape. Another child dismantles toys to see how they work inside because their will to power inclines toward understanding, curiosity, and structure. Freedom, for Nietzsche, is allowing that force to break the surface, to develop, to test itself. A friend of mine, Sarah, is a young woman who since childhood loved writing, telling stories, and observing people. But because her family has a tradition of teachers and the military, the sentence she heard all day was, "Writing won't make you money. Choose something stable." She chose medicine, safe, with steady pay, and her family was satisfied. But what followed were days she always described to me as exhausting. Going to work was not a nightmare, but it was never a joy either. No one treated her badly, yet she constantly felt she was in the wrong place. And what about you? Pause for a few seconds, close your eyes and reflect. If it were not to please anyone, where would you belong? Somewhere far away, where you could start over from the beginning without any restraints? Or an organization where you could devote yourself fully to the values of the community instead of merely producing profit? I want you to dig into every corner of your mind where you can find the passion that belongs to the most original version of you and ask, how long have I ignored the dream inside me? If you are brave enough, we are always ready to hear your heart. That sharing may surprise you, because there is, in fact, a whole community like you. And perhaps someone else's story will give you the strength to break out of the cocoon that has held you for far too long. You can also see people whom society calls reckless, strange, yet they carry a very clear sense of being alive. Perhaps your own brother or sister, a close friend who once dropped out of college to pursue a musical dream, a researcher who left a high-paying job to study again, someone with an impressive career who suddenly opens a small cafe in exactly their own colors. These people are not necessarily successful in the way newspapers like to define it, but they are doing something Nietzsche respects far more, attempting to live faithfully to their nature, rather than living the role assigned by others. Nietzsche does not say, "Be yourself," in a sweet, comfortable way. For him, becoming yourself is a harsh task, because that self sometimes does not fit the trend, does not fit the market, does not fit your family's culture, and may not even fit the image of a good person promoted by religion or morality. That means, if you follow it, you may have to abandon many things. He does not romanticize that process, but he believes everything else, even fame and respect, becomes hollow if you keep avoiding the question, in the end, who are you, and how much are you willing to pay to become that? Here we begin to see that Nietzsche's definition of freedom is completely different from the common one. Freedom for him is daring to use your life as material, to experiment with how far this nature can go. You use time, energy, failure, and even pain to dig deeper into a direction you know you belong in, instead of swimming through 10 different directions just to win applause from the outside world. Strangely, when you look at it this way, many crises you thought were an illness turn out to be material for a more complete version of you. The empty, meaningless boredom of doing work that does not fit you. The anxiety of living in a relationship where you must suffocate your true nature just to keep the peace. That is not simply stress. That is the acorn inside you knocking. And only when you understand this deeply can you understand why shame is so dangerous. Because shame, contrary to what you think, is not merely an unpleasant feeling. It is the invisible pot that constricts the roots, the layer of stone wrapped around the marble, the voice that keeps whispering, "People are watching." Before we touch shame, carve one very Nietzschean thing into your mind. It is time to stop asking, "How do I please everyone?" and start asking, "What kind of person am I really, and how much courage do I need to live that way?" From the moment you dare to ask that, The journey of becoming who you are has begun. Part 2. The psychological mechanism of shame. If freedom for Nietzsche is letting the oak tree inside you grow into its true form, then shame is the invisible cord cinched around the trunk, making it grow crooked, stunted, and always believing the fault lies within itself. Shame is not merely a fleeting, unpleasant feeling. It is a psychological mechanism, a refined kind of hypnosis. It makes you believe your true self is something that must be hidden. The core of shame rests in a simple but poisonous sentence: I am this kind of person. Look closely. It does not say, I did something wrong, but I am a mistake. While guilt is often attached to behavior, shame attaches itself to being. I am contemptible. I am nothing. That is why shame grips deeper, lasts longer, and is harder to remove. But what is should? Who stamped that should onto your forehead like a seal? If you look back to early childhood, you will see that a child initially has no should. They have want. Want to run, they run. Want to ask, they ask. Want to laugh, they laugh. A child is a living underground stream pouring out. They have not yet been split from their instincts. Then one day, a sentence appears. You can't do that. At first it is for your safety, but gradually it becomes a system. Boys don't cry. Girls must be gentle. The talented must be number one. From that moment, you begin living in two worlds, the world of what you are and the world of what you must be. Nietzsche is highly sensitive to this moment because he sees it as more than education. It is a process of domestication. A wild animal, once domesticated, learns to suppress its instinct to be rewarded in order not to be punished. Human beings are the same. You learn to read adults' eyes the way you read a weather forecast. Will there be a storm today? And once you start living by that forecast, want gradually gives way to should. The frightening part is this: eventually, you can no longer tell whose voice that should is. It becomes the voice in your own head. You think it is conscience, but often it is only the echo of the crowd. From a scientific point of view, there is something very notable. Shame is tightly bound to belonging. Human beings are social creatures. In tribal times, being cast out of the group meant death. So our brains developed an alarm system exquisitely sensitive to signs of being mocked, scorned, not belonging. Shame, in a sense, is an alarm bell. If they do not accept me, I will be abandoned. But modern society has turned that survival alarm into a tool for molding people. It is used not only to keep you out of danger, but to make you easier to govern. The operation of shame runs in 3 steps, like a machine. First, an ideal image is created. Second, comparison. Third, self-condemnation. The ideal image is often not created by you. It comes from advertising, religion, family, culture, and friends. You hear it repeated until it becomes the default. Then you look at yourself and see, you do not match. You do not only see I am different, you see I am less. And the final, most ruthless step is condemnation. So I have a problem. Nicola, a young man working as a designer, lives a quiet life. He does not like parties. Every weekend he goes home, cooks, reads, and plays with his cat. From the outside, his life seems peaceful enough. Then, every night before bed, Nicola scrolls social media. There, old friends take turns performing their lives. Someone shows off a new car. Someone posts photos in Europe. Someone announces a promotion. Someone closes a $100 million deal. Gradually, each photo stops being a photo and becomes a mirror. With every scroll, one word appears in Nicola's head: falling behind. And then he slowly avoids reunions because he feels ashamed when he senses he has not become as successful as they are. Do you see? Shame can be triggered without anyone standing in front of you. When you are labeled like that, you are not only afraid of punishment, you are afraid of being defined. And when a child is defined repeatedly, they will try to escape that definition at all costs. But how do they escape? That is when the comparison machine is installed in your head. You grow up and automatically measure yourself with someone else's ruler. You become like a person living in a room full of mirrors. Sartre once spoke of the gaze of others as something that turns us into objects. When we are being watched, we suddenly feel like an item being evaluated. Shame is the moment you feel you are no longer a living subject, but an object being graded. Nietzsche goes further. He not only says shame comes from the gaze, but also from the entire system of values standing behind that gaze. If you want to see shame more clearly, observe the language in your own head. Shame rarely speaks in specific sentences. It speaks in vague sensations. I'm so weird. I'm dirty. I'm not like anyone. I'm so terrible at communicating. What I want you to understand is this. Shame is not "you are weak." Shame is a mechanism triggered when your true self collides with a self you should be that society has erected. It is the product of comparison, labels, and the fear of being cast out. And when you understand the mechanism, you begin to see a chilling truth. Many of your shames were not created by you. They were handed down like a toxic inheritance. But wait. Understanding the mechanism is only unlocking the outer layer. The next question is the one that makes people fall silent. If shame is such a powerful tool, then who is using it? Who benefits when you make yourself smaller? And why does Nietzsche say that the bad person is the one who wants others to feel ashamed? In the next part, we will step into the darker side of the issue. Shame is not only a matter of personal psychology, but it is a structure of power. And once you see that structure, you will understand why so much morality you once worshipped is, in fact, a whip wrapped in velvet. Part 3. The Genealogy of Shame. Slave morality and the instrument of human control. But Nietzsche does not stop at the psychological level. He asks a more uncomfortable question. Who constructed that image of what one should be? Who benefits when you are always convinced you are wrong? And this is where he turns to the genealogy of shame. Its origin lies in moral systems designed to rule human beings. Nietzsche distinguishes two kinds of morality: self-mastered morality and slave morality. Master morality arises from strong people, warriors, nobles, those who dare to act and dare to take responsibility. Slave morality, by contrast, is born from the weak, those who cannot win through strength, and so must win through a game of values. Nietzsche describes a feeling that is quintessential to the slave: resentment. The weak look at the strong with both fear and envy, yet they do not dare to confront them directly, so they perform a reversal. They turn what the strong cherish into sin, and what belongs to obedience, submission, endurance into virtue. Instead of saying, "We are weak," they say, "We are kind, we are humble, we are moral." The strong are evil, sinful, and shameful. Traditional religion, in Nietzsche's eyes, is the master of this technique. He points out, Before God, human beings do not merely see themselves as having done wrong, but as guilty in their very nature. Desire, ambition, the will to live, the appetite for enjoyment, all natural forces of life are stamped with the labels sinful, shameful. The result is that people turn the blade against themselves. Instead of asking, how do we use this strength to create? They ask, how do we kill it? Now, step out of the church and return to the family, the office, and social media, and you may see the same structure. A mother, taught from childhood that women must sacrifice, must yield to be good, grows up and places that standard onto her daughter. Girls in this family must not be selfish, must not talk back, must not think for themselves. Here, within the slave moral system she has inherited, she believes she is teaching her to be a good person. But if you look through Nietzsche's eyes, you will see she is fastening a collar of shame around her child's neck. Each time the child wants to say no, the collar tightens. You're an unfilial child. You're a bad girl. Similarly, in the workplace, there are forms of corporate morality that are anything but healthy. People glorify self-erasure at work, praise overtime without complaint, and treat the abandonment of personal life as the emblem of dedication. Anyone who sets a boundary, who says, I need rest, is immediately labeled lacking passion, not committed enough to the job. This is slave morality in the disguise of company culture. What irritates Nietzsche most about slave morality is this: it disguises itself as compassion. It invokes kindness, morality for the community in order to bend human beings out of shape. So when you feel ashamed of your desire to be seen, of your wish to live your own life, of your anger at injustice, ask yourself, is that truly your sin, or only the voice of a slave morality that has been planted in your head? Perhaps what you were taught to call bad is actually the seed of a strength someone does not want you to use. Seeing the genealogy of shame is a crucial step. Because if you view shame only as a personal problem, you will keep blaming yourself forever. When you realize shame is a tool, one that has been invented, sharpened, and passed from generation to generation, your will to power, the part of you that wants to live as a subject rather than a slave, begins to whisper, if that's true, why am I still letting shame lead the way? And that question takes us into the next part. What does shame do to your true self? And how does it turn your life into a stage? Part 4. Consequences. So what happens to your very soul when you wear that collar for too long? When shame becomes a habit, people do something entirely natural. To survive, they do not seek healing, they seek camouflage. Jung calls this the persona, the social mask. Nietzsche describes the herd type. Individuals who have lost themselves to the point of becoming nothing but a composite of public opinion, captured in the line, every profound spirit needs a mask. Even more, around every profound spirit, a mask is continually growing. The mechanism is simple. If being yourself brings humiliation, if it is judged as wrong, then the fastest way to hurt less is to abandon that self and install a version that is acceptable. You no longer strive to become yourself. You strive to become the role least likely to be criticized. You know what to say to make others comfortable, what to do to be right. But if someone asks, what do you truly want? You hesitate. The second consequence is a strange kind of loneliness. Loneliness in the middle of your own loved ones. When you live through a role, Every relationship becomes a relationship with the character you are performing, not with your true self. Your partner loves an edited version of you. Your parents are proud of a well-behaved version. Your friends value a version that always fits the vibe. Everyone may praise you as easygoing, pleasant, yet deep down you know, no one truly understands me. Nietzsche calls this the existence of the last man, the one who lives long, lives stable, lives well, but without fire, without depth, without any effort to overcome himself. He is safe to the point that he is no longer himself. The third consequence: when you live too long in shame, you develop a cruel habit, self-contempt. This is no longer shame over a specific action. It becomes a constant background voice. You think you deserve happiness. Someone like you. That voice kills every genuine desire in its cradle. Each time you dream of a different life, a different career, a different love, the machine chews it up at once. Don't fantasize. You think that is reality, but often it is only shame wearing the mask of sobriety. Psychologically, this is fertile ground for depression, addiction, and emotional numbness. When the true self is locked away, it does not disappear. It pounds on the door. It sends signals in the form of weariness, meaninglessness, fatigue, and obsession. And because you were never taught how to listen, you search for other ways to mute the noise. Those solutions do not address the root. They are only the ways you temporarily pretend you have not abandoned yourself as deeply as you have. Nietzsche looks at this phenomenon and gives it a name: nihilism. When you have lived too long as a role for others, one day you wake up and everything feels meaningless. Work is meaningless, relationships are meaningless, and success is meaningless. The problem is that you then feel ashamed of that sense of meaninglessness as well. Other people have it worse than me. How do I have the right to find my life meaningless? And so, you put on yet another mask: gratitude, positivity, over the nihilism. Another consequence of shame that few people name correctly: it slowly erodes your ability to love for real. Because love, at its deepest level, is when two naked beings recognize each other and still choose to stay. But if you do not dare to bring your true self into the light, you do not enter love. You bring your mask to negotiate with someone else's mask. And from that moment, conflict begins. Conflict with yourself, with the people who have grown used to your mask, and with the moral system that taught you your nature is not worthy. Yet that is also the first moment you have the chance to live as a being, rather than as a supporting role directed by shame. Thank you for coming this far with me, because if you're still listening at this point, it means you're not here just for entertainment. You're touching something very real inside yourself. We've only reached the halfway mark, and the rest is the crucial part. Not only seeing the prison of shame, but finding the key and walking out of it. So if you want to hear the part about overcoming, so you no longer have to live like a shadow of yourself, stay until the end. You can hit like as a small sign so the algorithm doesn't bury videos like this, and subscribe as a promise to yourself that you'll return, until the sentence, "Becoming who you are," is no longer just philosophy, but becomes a way of living. Part 5. Overcoming Shame, a revaluation of all values. From here, two choices become unmistakably clear. Either you keep performing more smoothly, or you do what Nietzsche suggests. Flip the entire stage over. For him, overcoming shame is not take a deep breath, think positive, but a surgery on values. A revaluation of every value you have been using to measure yourself. For Nietzsche, overcoming shame is not learning a few confidence hacks, nor is it repeating, "I love myself," like a mantra. He plays a much harder game. Instead of letting old values keep judging you, you begin to judge those values in return. In other words, instead of asking, "Am I good enough by this ruler?" you ask, "Is this ruler worthy enough for me to use on my life?" The first step is learning to look straight at the inner voice, but with skeptical eyes. Each time your mind blurts out, "You're selfish, you're weak, you're useless," don't rush to argue whether it's true or false. Pause for a beat and ask, whose voice is this? Is it the voice of the child who once wanted to draw, to sing, to ask questions, or the voice of an adult scolding you 30 years ago? Is it the voice of a priest, or the voice of a faceless crowd online you've never even met? You'll notice something slightly chilling. Most of those "you must be this, you must be that" sentences in your head are actually memory, not intuition. Once you can recognize those voices, Nietzsche suggests you replace the ruler entirely. In The Antichrist, he asks, "What is good?" All this heightens the feeling of power, the will to power, power itself in man. What is bad? All that proceeds from weakness. Here, power is not trampling others. It is your steadiness, your capacity to take responsibility. A value, if it is truly good, will make you more grounded, clearer, and more self-directed. A value, if every time you think of it, you shrink, grow fearful, despise yourself, then no matter whether it is labeled morality, tradition, or culture for Nietzsche, it deserves to be placed on the operating table. You can test this yourself. Recall a standard you often use to beat yourself with and feel what it does to your body. If you're brave enough, try writing one such standard in the comments so we can face it together. If, every time you think of it, your chest tightens, your throat constricts, your stomach turns cold, then that is not conscience making you grow. By contrast, there are principles that, when you remember them, make you stand taller. Be honest with myself. Don't do what I despise. Those lines may be difficult, but they lift you rather than press you down. Revaluation means learning to distinguish these two kinds with absolute clarity. At this point, many things once treated as stains under the gaze of slave morality begin to reveal themselves as seeds of strength. Sensitivity, once scolded as weakness, turns out to be the ability to register what others cannot hear. Anger, once taught as bad, turns out to be the reflex that appears when your boundaries are violated. Ambition, once condemned as greed, turns out to be the energy that wants to reach outward and leave a mark. Nietzsche does not tell you to unleash everything and do whatever you please. He demands that you ask a brutally honest question. If this part of me is placed in the right place, will it destroy or will it build? From here, a subtle movement takes place, a reversal of power in a distinctly Nietzschean sense. You stop standing beneath the hammer of anonymous standards, and the first feeling will be strange, both relief and fear, partly because you will have to take more responsibility for how you live. Revaluation does not mean smashing all old values. Nietzsche is not calling you to become amoral. He only wants you to own what you live by. There are values you may keep intact: honesty, not exploiting others, and respecting your own word. Only this time, You keep them because you see they make you feel more human and dignified, not because you fear shame if you don't. And there will also be values you must change or discard. Endure. Obey. Slowly, as the values that do not belong to you fall away, a space opens up where you can freely explore life, explore your inner world, and use that self-mastery to become the author of your own existence. When that question becomes a habit, shame does not vanish completely, but it becomes only a feeling, a signal for you to check. Maybe there's still some borrowed value controlling me here. And from here, Nietzsche pulls you into the next two crucibles, using the will to power to turn shame into fuel, and using the image of eternal recurrence to ask a question you cannot escape. If this life repeats infinitely, would you dare to live exactly as you are living? Or would you rewrite the rules starting now? Part 6. Eternal Recurrence, the Supreme Test. Picture it like this. Nietzsche says, imagine one night a demon comes to sit by your bed and says, the life you are living, every sorrow, every happiness, every loss, every success, will repeat the same countless times, with nothing changed. How will you respond? It is Nietzsche's blade pressed to your throat. If that thought drives you to despair, if your first reflex is, no, please don't, then it means that deep down you are living a life you do not even want to sign your name to. You are living a life that, if forced to repeat infinitely, you would experience as torture rather than choice. By contrast, Nietzsche imagines another kind of person who, upon hearing the demon, clenches their jaw and then finally smiles and answers, "Is that so? Then there is no greater gift." This person is not living a smooth life with no accidents, no pain, but it is a life in which every scar, every decision, every road they chose, even their mistakes, is something they are willing to receive again, because it is truly their life. Nietzsche calls this state amor fati, the love of one's fate. Eternal recurrence is the test of whether you can reach the point of loving your life instead of merely enduring your life. When you connect this to shame, the question becomes even sharper. If your life right now is largely decided by the fear of losing face, of being judged, of failing to match the morality people taught you, could you bear living that loop again infinitely? Would you accept living countless more lives in relationships where you never dare to speak the truth? In a job where every morning you wake up and put on the same false face? In a body you are always ashamed of, always convinced is not good enough? If your answer is no, then this is not a normal bit of dissatisfaction. It is a red warning. Your true self is being betrayed every day. Eternal recurrence, in this sense, becomes a moral test. It drags you out of the mindset of, just get through this year, get through this phase, because in this test, there is no getting through at all. What you choose today is not temporary. It is what you must be ready to live again and again, forever. And right here, eternal recurrence is also a reminder. Weigh every action, because the consequences may be long-lasting. In Nietzsche's imagining, an impulsive decision does not leave marks for a day. It is like a groove carved into your being, then printed again, infinitely. It resembles the cumulative effect in science. A small force, repeated over and over, can erode stone, shift an orbit, leave a groove. Most tragedies do not come from one fateful day, but from a chain of tiny choices repeated until they become destiny. Eternal recurrence magnifies that truth to its extreme. Every habit you indulge today, if repeated infinitely, becomes an eternal prison. And every decent act, if repeated infinitely, becomes an immortal quality of who you are. It may sound extreme, but if you look with the eyes of psychology, you'll see this is a philosophical expression of what many studies have shown. On the sickbed, what people regret most is often not, "I wasn't obedient the way others wanted," but the regret of, "I didn't do this. I wish I had been braver." Eternal recurrence compresses all that regret into a single second. The second you must answer whether you dare to sign your name to the life you have now. Of course, no one can live so that every second is something I want to repeat. But Nietzsche does not demand perfection. He only wants you to use this question as an inner compass. Whenever you face a major choice, try whispering to yourself, "If I had to live this moment again infinitely, would I do it differently?" A person who overcomes shame in Nietzsche's way is not someone who has never been wrong, but someone who can look back at their mistakes, their humiliations, their dark passages and say, "Without them, I would not be who I am today." They do not keep torturing themselves over the past, nor do they shrug it off. They absorb it into their being like a scar on the body, a trace of pain, but also the mark of a life that has grown. Amor fati is not fake optimism. It is the ability to turn even what is shameful into material for living more deeply, more truthfully. And that is the ground you need to keep going, to use the will to power not only to escape shame, but to build a life that, if a demon stepped into your room tonight and said, "You will have to live like this forever," you could fall silent for a moment, feel your heart tighten, and still finally nod. Part 7. Practicing your retreat from the prison of shame. The first step is daring to choose solitude instead of belonging in the wrong place. This is the most painful part because it cuts straight into the herd instinct. There are groups, relationships, drinking tables, and group chats where the price of staying is that you must make yourself smaller. You have to smirk through insults. You have to pretend you don't care. So sometimes solitude is not a lack. It is an act of sovereignty. You stand alone, but for the first time, you can hear your own voice without it being drowned out by the noise of the crowd. The second step is to find or create a new tribe. Not a shallow, shared interests tribe, but a tribe with one clear condition. They do not punish you for your real nature. They do not use shame as a weapon. A good friend is not someone who always praises you, but someone safe enough for you to confess to speak the truth without making you feel looked down on. Better a few and real than many and all acting. When you are with the right people, you will notice a very specific sign. Your body relaxes. The third step. Create your life like a work of art. Nietzsche does not only want you to escape suffering. He wants you to turn your life into something worth living again. Art, writing, drawing, research, entrepreneurship, training the body, designing a way of life. The form does not matter. What matters is that you are pouring your will into life instead of merely reacting to life. Each day you make something that bears your fingerprints. Shame loses some of its territory because you are no longer living to be graded. You are living to create. Finally, there is something Nietzsche is very precise about. Choosing a style for yourself, shaping a distinct line for your character and your way of living. You keep what makes you strong and beautiful, and you cut away what makes you petty and false. You learn to say no in a calm voice. You choose habits that make you feel alive. You love and work in a rhythm you can sign your name to. When you have style, you no longer need permission to exist. And that is when the prison of shame begins to lose its lock. If there is one thing worth keeping after all these layers of analysis, it is an attitude. Look straight, without self-pity and without self-torture. Look straight so you can tell which voice is yours and which voice is borrowed. Look straight so you dare to pay the price for truth, instead of paying your entire life for a role. You don't need to transform overnight, but you do need one honest moment each day, one moment when you stop asking permission to exist. A small but right choice, a true but non-poisonous sentence, a refusal without fear. And if tonight, in a quiet room, you hear the question, "Who am I ashamed in front of?" let it echo one beat longer. Because sometimes that single beat is enough for a life to begin changing direction.